We move on to the U.S., where stock index futures pointed to a slightly positive open as investors geared up for another big batch of earnings from major U.S. companies. The second day of the trading week will continue to dole out a new batch of corporate earnings. In the data space, the National Federation of Independent Business Small Business Survey is set to be released at 6 a.m. Eastern Time. That should have been out by now, followed by JOLTS data at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and consumer credit at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Looking to the political sphere, President Donald Trump is continuing with his excursions abroad in Asia this week. In central bank news, Federal Reserve's Vice Chair for Supervision, Randall Quarles, is set to deliver remarks at the Clearinghouse's annual conference in New York. Current Fed Chair Janet Yellen is expected to be at the presentation of the Paul H. Douglas Award for Ethics in Government, set to take place in Washington. Yellen's latest speech comes hot on the heels of the October jobs data, FOMC meeting, and news that Jay Powell will become chair of the U.S. Central Bank next February. And in Asia, major indices there closed higher today after U.S. stocks closed at record levels and oil prices traded at their highest mark since 2015 overnight. Amid that backdrop, investors also watched for headlines as President Donald Trump's tour of Asia continued, with the president arriving in South Korea following his two-day visit to Japan. Japan's Nikkei 225 jumped 1.73%, its highest close in 25 years. Across the Korean Strait, the Kospi finished the session up 0.16%. The Australian ASX 200 rose 1.02%, the first time the index has crossed the 6,000 mark since 2008. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index tacked on 1.33%. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite edged up 0.8%, and the Shenzhen Composite ended the day 0.67% higher. And to other market news, Ghana has missed its target to sell 3.6 billion cedis. That's about $816 million of non-sovereign bonds to settle the debt of energy utilities as demand for the securities fell short even after the offer was extended by a week. The West African nation placed 2.3 billion cedis of the 10-year bonds at 19.5% after receiving 2.8 billion cedis in bids demanding a yield of as much as 20%. The debt was offered separately to a tender for 2.4 billion cedis of 7-year securities that were fully subscribed on October 27 when the book runners extended the sale for the 10-year bonds. The bonds were sold through a special purpose vehicle that will be funded with the proceeds of energy sector levies. 5 major energy utilities in Ghana had 10.86 billion cedis of payable loans at the end of June last year, according to the International Monetary Fund. Now, the 10-month-old government of President Nana Akufo-Addo sold the bonds after vowing to boost banks' ability to lend and restructure the debt-laden energy sector. And the South African cement maker PPC has flagged as much as 40% increase in half-year profit, citing robust performance in Zimbabwe and Rwanda and lower finance costs. PPC, the subject of tie-up approaches from local rival Afrosam and Sweden's Lafarge Holcim, said headline earnings per share likely rose by between 30 and 40% in the 6 months ended September. Headline EPS, the widely used performance measure in South Africa, strips out certain one-off items. Still in South Africa, the airways there will revive a plan to seek an equity partner that's able to provide cash and operational savings to help turn around the state airline. Its new chief executive officer, Vuyani Jarana, says a strategic investor would ideally come from within the aviation industry, and that will enable unprofitable SAA to share costs, improve customer service, and gain a capital injection. Swiss Air bought a 20% stake in SAA in 1999, only for the South African government to buy it back after the Swiss carrier went bankrupt. SAA is also part of the Star Alliance, a global code-sharing network that includes Deutsche Lufthansa and Singapore Airlines. SAA has this year already reduced flights to the South African cities of Port Elizabeth and East London and scaled back routes to Luanda. the capital of Angola, and Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll look at the commodities market scene. Do stay with us.